Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing our Mid-Atlantic House predictions for the month of October ahead of the midterm elections this November. We're just 2 weeks away now from Election Day. Of course, we're going to be live streaming the Pennsylvania Senate debate tonight at 7:30 Eastern, so if you haven't already, link is down in the description. Set a reminder down below. You don't want to miss it. It'll probably be one of the most important Senate debates of this entire midterm cycle. So, of course, we're going to be covering the Mid-Atlantic region in today's video. We've already covered New England, and we'll get to the rest of the regions of the United States throughout the rest of the month of October before Election Day. In November, I'll do a final House prediction along with my final Senate and gubernatorial prediction. So with that out of the way, let's get straight into the video. Of course, if you haven't already, please like this video down below and subscribe if you're new. So if we take a look at the congressional districts that are considered toss-ups for the state of New York, we'll start off with New York and move our way down. There's really a wild card in the state of New York in particular, and that is, of course, Republican nominee for governor Lee Zeldin. What kind of coattails will Lee Zeldin have for Republicans in New York? Because there's a decent chunk of Democrats that will vote for Lee Zeldin as governor. I mean, that's really the only thing that explains the massive shift in the polls we've seen in the last few weeks. Zeldin hammering home the issue of crime, the fact that he's polling really well for a Republican in some of the boroughs of New York City. There's a lot of Democratic voters that are going to be voting for Zeldin, but the real question is whether or not they're going to be voting for Republicans down ballot. So, of course, we're going to start off with the 1st Congressional District, New York, which is located in my home region of Long Island. If we take a look at the leaning of the 1st Congressional District, originally it was a Trump +4 district. This was a district that Lee Zeldin won re-election in by about 10 points as an incumbent. Now we have basically a dead even purple district in the new New York 1. And the new 1st Congressional District is much more spread out than the old one. The old one's a lot more compact. The new one really stretches from really the border of western Suffolk County all the way out to Montauk Point, which is about 100 miles, much less compact than the original. But nonetheless, this is a district where you have a non-incumbent. Nick LaLota is the Republican nominee against Bridget Fleming, the Democrat. Bridget Fleming has run for a number of offices here on Long Island. She's ultimately usually lost her primaries, but she's now the nominee for this House district. The national environment is going to play a role in this race, but also Lee Zeldin being on the ticket will play a massive role in this race because Lee Zeldin's hometown of Shirley is in this district. I expect it to come really big for Zeldin. And I actually have a pretty bullish position on this district. I actually think it's going to be a solid Republican district this time around. Now, it does seem a bit dramatic given the fact that Nick LaLota, the Republican nominee, is a non-incumbent. But this is Zeldin's home district. He's expected to do very well in Long Island. He's polling very well in Long Island. And I think that's going to drive up Republican turnout to help the Republican nominee here win pretty easily. Again, we're looking at a national environment now where Republicans are probably going to be winning the generic ballot by 3 to 4 percentage points. Back in the last election in 2020, Democrats were winning the generic ballot by about 3 to 4. So you're going to see a large shift coupled with the fact that Lee Zeldin is from this district. I think it goes solid Republican. The 2nd district, I think, is a very similar story. Andrew Garbarino is a pretty moderate Republican. He's broken with the party a number of times to vote on certain gun control bills, the Biden infrastructure bill. He's basically a mold of his mentor, moderate Republican Peter King, who essentially anointed him to run for this seat, and I think ultimately he's going to win by a pretty comfortable margin. I mean, even FiveThirtyEight has Andrew Garbarino winning by a pretty big margin. We have these 2 districts on the eastern part of Long Island going red, but how do districts 3 and 4 end up faring for Republicans, given the fact that Zeldin will be on the top of the ticket? Of course, first, New York 3, this is Tom Suozzi's district. He's retiring. This is a district that's now Biden +8 as opposed to Biden +10.5. George Santos is the nominee for this district in particular. He was the nominee last time around. Of course, he lost by a pretty decent margin against Tom Suozzi. Tom Suozzi was a strong incumbent, very popular in the district. But now you have George Santos, who's already well known since he ran last time, and he's running in a good year for the Republican Party. This is actually a seat that I think, because of increased turnout of Republicans on Long Island for Zeldin, I actually think they're going to pick up. That was not the case in my former prediction. I think Santos probably wins this by about 3 points or so. I think Zeldin being at the top of the ticket, coupled with the national environment and the fact that there's no incumbent, is really going to swing this district overall. New York 4 is a much bluer district. In fact, it's a Biden +14 district. Although the same factors apply for the other districts, you're going to have high Republican turnout coupled with the fact that Zeldin being from the island is going to really help the down ballot candidates here. I still think this is a lean Democratic race, although I don't think it's certainly out of the question that Republicans pick up this seat. Again, Nassau County in particular does tend to swing a bit more wildly in these off-year elections. Republicans tend to do much, much better in midterm and off-year elections in Nassau than they do in general election years. So I think because of that, the down ballot Republicans are going to perform a lot better. Next, we go up to New York 17. This is Sean Patrick Maloney's congressional district. This is, of course, the chairman of the DCCC. He's actually been deemed vulnerable by some polling organizations, although he is an extremely strong candidate. He has a lot of money, although some funding has been cut from this race in particular. I still think Sean Patrick Maloney will hold on, but I think in a very good year or a good showing for Lee Zeldin in particular, that he could potentially go down, but I think he would definitely be the hardest Democrat to beat out of all of these toss-up races that we're going to get to, of course, except Paul Tonko. I just want to talk about this race, which is why it's not filled in. Moving on up to Pat Ryan's district in New York 18. This is a district that Biden won by 8 points. It's a pretty solid district. Tim Ryan now has a lot of name recognition since he won that special election in New York's 19, which he's now not even able to run in anymore. He's running in the 18, so a little bit confusing. He is a slight favorite, I think, in this race, just overall. Zeldin's coattails could bring him over the top, although I think Zeldin is going to help candidates much more on Long Island than he will upstate. And the Hudson Valley is an area that has gotten more liberal, especially because you had a lot of Manhattanites moving up to this area because of COVID. And the 2020 shifts really reflect this sort of shift to the left that we've seen in the Hudson Valley and parts of upstate New York. Moving on up to New York 19, I think Mark Molinaro actually won't have any problem winning this district. I really do think the special election was a fluke. I think he lost mainly because Democrats were energized, but it was a very low turnout election. Pat Ryan was the county executive of Ulster County. Ulster County is now not in this district anymore, so you don't really have that huge Democratic anchor that the Democratic opponent has an advantage in. I really think Molinaro is going to exceed expectations. I could see him winning this by about 6 to 7 points. I think the year coupled with Zeldin's strong performance is really going to help the candidates down ballot in this race. I did slightly gloss over New York 11. We'll get to that district after we finish these upstate districts. But New York 22 is John Katko's district. It, of course, encompasses Onondaga County and a few other counties in upstate New York. It's currently a Biden +7 district, but even 538 has Republicans winning this district because Onondaga County is an interesting swing county. It's actually a county that voted for Joe Biden by about 20 points, but also voted for John Katko very narrowly down ballot. So it is a very interesting county overall, and I think it's an area where Zeldin is probably going to do very well, and I think his down ballot coattails will really help the Republican here. The Republican nominee is pretty strong in this district. I think it goes lean Republican. I think he probably gets around 52% of the vote or so, but again, Zeldin's coattails are going to be a huge factor in a lot of these New York races because he's a very strong candidate, and he's a candidate that for a while I really doubted earlier on my channel, but given the real tightening of this race, it's very clear that he's a very formidable force, and I think in a year like 2022, a year where Republicans are energized, he's going to have serious coattails that are going to help down ballot candidates. Finally, Paul Tonko's district. This is safe Democratic. I just wanted to talk about it because I think that Republicans are probably going to get in the low 40s in this district. He's an entrenched incumbent, but this district actually did get slightly more Republican since its prior redistricting. It used to be Biden +21, now it's Biden +19. I think the Republicans could get 41, 42% in the district, but it's still going to be a safe district. Finally, we get to New York 11. Nicole Maliotakis is a safe incumbent. I mean, she was able to beat Max Rose, her opponent the last go around, and the incumbent for this seat by about 7 points in 2020. Given that this is going to be a much more favorable year for Republicans, I would be shocked if she didn't beat him by a safe margin. I think she'll easily get 57, maybe 58% of the vote in this district. I don't think it's going to be very close. I think Max Rose is really going to be hurt by the national environment in this race. Moving on over to the state of New Jersey. Of course, we'll start off with New Jersey's 5th congressional district. This is a Biden +12 district. This is probably a likely Democratic hold, mainly just because of redistricting. The New Jersey Independent Commission, which I don't think was very independent, did a very good job of protecting a lot of Democratic incumbents throughout the state of New Jersey. In fact, there's very little competitive districts in New Jersey at all. You really only have 2 real competitive districts. Of course, the one in South Jersey, and of course, you have Malinowski's district over here in the 7th Congressional District. Those are really the only two competitive districts in New Jersey. The rest are either safe blue or safe red. So the Independent Redistricting Commission really wasn't that independent at the end of the day. Now, of course, for Jeff Van Drew's district, I think he wins by a pretty decent margin. I think he'll win by about 10 or 11 points. National Environment's really going to help him in that race in particular. Of course, if we go over to New Jersey's 3rd, this went from Biden +0 to Biden +14. While Biden's favorabilities have fallen and while the National Environment will help Republicans, I'm still also going to categorize this as likely Democratic. I don't really think it's realistic for Republicans to flip this seat. It's not impossible. Stranger things have happened, but I do think that this is probably likely Democrat as of right now. Of course, if we go over to the Northwestern District here, of course, this is the 7th District. Malinowski is the incumbent in this district. If we take a look at the polling for this district in particular, sorry, I meant the 7th Congressional District. It changed in redistricting. But if we take a look at the polling for this race, Tom Keene Jr. is doing extremely well against Malinowski, and the DCCC is actually really pulled out of this race. It doesn't really seem like they're interested in helping Malinowski anymore. It looks like Tom Keene is probably going to win this race. A lot of pollsters have predicted that this is going to be a flip for the Republican Party. I think Tom Keene probably wins this race by about 5 points or so. I wouldn't be surprised if he slightly overperforms given the national environment, but I think 5 is a pretty realistic prediction for this race. Moving on over finally to District 11. This is also another likely categorization. I think Republicans will get a bit closer. They'll get within 12 because of the national environment, but it's really not a competitive race to pay much attention to. Moving on over to the state of Pennsylvania. We'll start off with Pennsylvania's 8th. Of course, this is Matt Cartwright's district. This is a district that voted for Donald Trump by 3 points in the new district. Of course, in the old one, it voted for Trump by 4.5%. This was the district that Cartwright won by about 3 points. I think this is the year Matt Cartwright loses his re-election. He's a very strong incumbent, but I think the wave year is going to be a bit too strong for him. I think Bognet probably beats him by about 3 percentage points. I also think Dr. Oz probably will do better in northeastern Pennsylvania and eastern Pennsylvania in general, and I think his coattails will kind of lift up Republican candidates as well. Again, Cartwright is an incredibly strong candidate. He was able to win twice, both times in districts, I believe, that voted for Donald Trump. I think even the gerrymandered 2016 district voted for Donald Trump. So I think Cartwright finally goes down in 2022, I think mainly due to partisanship. There will be some split ticket voting in this district, but I still think Bognet probably will upset here. Of course, we go down to Pennsylvania 7th. Susan Wild is a very vulnerable incumbent. Her district has gotten redder. It went from a Biden +5 district to a Biden +0.6. I think she's essentially dead on arrival, especially given the national environment. Carbon County is now in the district, which is a safe Republican county. I think Trump got 65% of the vote there. So it has gotten significantly redder. I think her opponent, Lisa Scheller, probably wins by about 5 points or so. So we're also going to put that in the lean flip category for Republicans. Moving on down to the 6th Congressional District. This is a likely district. I think Chester County is going to be an area where you see a significant shift back to the right, but I don't think it's going to be enough to carry a Republican to victory in this seat. Again, this is a seat that voted for Joe Biden by about 15 points, so this isn't really in play. But I think, like those other New Jersey seats we talked about, the Republican is probably going to get within 12 to 10 points of winning this district just because of the national environment. Look now at Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. This is Scott Perry's district. I think he probably wins by about 7 points or so. Again, national environment, he's an incumbent. He's going to do fairly well there. Moving on over to Pennsylvania's 12th. Now, this is one that has gotten a lot of news because the Democratic nominee is a very poor nominee. She's a very far left nominee. A lot of people have seen her as very vulnerable. Even FiveThirtyEight has her opponent, Mike Doyle, who has the exact same name as the former Democratic incumbent who occupied this seat, Mike Doyle. So it has actually caused some confusion because I believe the Summers campaign was calling voters and asking them who they plan to vote for, and they said Mike Doyle, who, of course, is not running for re-election. The Republican's name is Mike Doyle. So it caused a bit of confusion. Some Democrats are very worried about that. They're also worried about the fact that Summer Lee is a very far-left candidate, especially when you talk about issues like crime. Again, parts of urban Pittsburgh occupy this district, but you also have parts of Westmoreland County. So you've got red and blue parts, but it is still a very blue district overall. Again, this is a district that voted for Biden by 20 points. But I would not be surprised if you see a significant overperformance for Republicans here because of the dynamics of this race. I could see this being about an 11-point race for Summerlee. I think she's going to significantly underperform here. Moving up to Connor Lamb's former district, we're finally going to take a look at Pennsylvania's 17th. This is a district that has actually gotten bluer since the redistricting. Of course, it went from Biden +3 to about Biden +6. Although if we take a look at the polling for this race in particular, it looks pretty promising for the Republican candidate. Schaefer does seem to be doing very well. Again, a lot of the polls that we have out of this race are Democratic-leaning polls, and they all have Schaefer very close, basically within the margin of error. There's only one poll that has him down by about 6. I think he's going to flip this seat. RCP agrees with me in that categorization. I think the national environment is going to carry him over the top. I think it's going to be very close, but again, I think he probably wins by about a lean margin here, 2 to 3 points, give or take. Finally, we go down to Maryland's 6th congressional district. This is the only district that's remotely competitive in the state of Maryland. If we take a look at the polling out of the district, we've got a poll where Republican Neil Parrott leads, and then we have a poll where David Trone, the incumbent, leads. Obviously, if the national environment is very strong for Republicans, this could be a pickup. It likely could be, especially because I think the shifts in Western Maryland are very unique. They were very ex-urban shifts. These were not super suburban shifts. Again, if we take a look at the Maryland district in question, of course, the new district is much more concentrated in Western Maryland, and it's a lot more compact. Again, less of it is going into Montgomery County. So with Democrats having significantly less enthusiasm, let's say, in this race, it's very possible for a Republican pickup. I'm still going to put it as tilt Democrat for now. I think Trone at this rate will barely hold on, but that could easily change within the next 2 weeks for my November House prediction. So anyway, that's it for today's video. That's my Mid-Atlantic House predictions. Again, 2 weeks can be a lifetime in politics, and a lot of these could end up changing. Again, hopefully we get some more polls out of these districts, but this is sort of how I'm feeling about these races as of right now. Of course, comment your thoughts down below. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Of course, tune in for the Pennsylvania Senate live stream, 7:30 Eastern tonight. Link is in the description. As always, again, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.